A majestic chandelier, demonstrating the family's wealth and status, illuminated the entire vast area of the room, and this seemed to make it warm. But even in the cozy atmosphere of the banquet, one guest decided to make a tricky remark about the arrival of another girl who came to the celebration. All the guests start exchanging glances while the culprit of the noise continues to walk towards her fiancé, who says that he is disappointed in her, but at least he had some hopes for her. The crown prince of the Ortis Empire shouts her name loudly and clearly, causing her gaze to shift away and her eyes to become ashamed of herself. Duke Felicia's daughter continues to listen to how no woman in this world would stoop to such vile tricks as she does. The man clarifies that people say for good reason that the lady is a black witch. Trips Rita Ortis says that this talent perfectly suits her vile nature. At that very moment, a young girl in a yellow dress runs out of the crowd and addresses the Prince of the Empire. Lady Lilia Albiolus, with sincere and restless eyes, says that the girl is not guilty. The young lady says that this is a misunderstanding of that young lady towards her, and the Crown Prince asks why she is so kind. The smug face, as if on purpose, begins to irritate and frighten the girl herself, to whom the Crown Prince begins to reach out his hands and to say that Fionia Felicia will not touch her, while the Duke's daughter Felican herself, with a stern face, restrains all her emotions and thoughts. The newcomer is in an unpleasant shock. The traveler, Countess Seraphi Validus, calls him a prince with clear disgust. The girl has long understood that he is a damned despot and narcissist, and not like he was described in the original, and her eyes only roll more. She tried her best to prevent this scene from happening, where the Crown Prince exposes Fionia's atrocities at a banquet. The Duke's daughter Felicina is condemned by everyone, and the engagement with him collapses and everything becomes irrevocable. The time traveler got into the original to live well and change a lot of things, because she was a secondary character and had no other choice. Luna Ferrens offers her a drink, which Countess rudely refuses, since she has no time for alcohol right now. She begins to think that now, because of this incident, Fionia and Lilia will be able to abandon the Crown Prince, for whom they are too good. Fionia begins a monologue. As the Crown Prince said, she lacks the qualities to become the mother of the nation. Blinded by simple jealousy, she does not hesitate to commit base acts. Trips Rita Ortis asks if she admits it only now, and hears a denial that the lady was well aware of her shortcomings before. The lady expresses a good understanding of His Highness's will. She takes the ring off her finger, looks through it at Lilia and the Crown Prince, and expresses her desire to relinquish her duties as his bride. But the man was only afraid of the ducal family and avoided directly announcing the break in the engagement, trying to incite the crowd, which makes him look terribly pathetic in the eyes of Seraphi Validus. She looks at Fionia, who denies the accusation that she is plotting another intrigue, and the gentlemen present here will be witnesses to this. The Crown Prince reaches out to Lilia's cheek, beginning to say that the one who tortured her will never touch her again, not even with a finger. She hits his cheek with all her might, causing the man's head to fly off with a loud bang. Lily calls him a disgusting bastard. Trips Rita Ortis grins at her as his cheek begins to burn from the force of the blow. All the guests who arrived began to shout loudly over each other and discuss this incident all at once. The time traveler and Luna Ferrens are also shocked by everything that is happening. Lily runs to the fallen Fionia, asking for her forgiveness, and falls to her. The lady begins to frantically question her about whether she is shocked and does not know what to do. But the worried Fionia only thinks about how the girl in front of her, crying from worry for her, slapped the Crown Prince and then immediately ran to her. She admits to feeling relieved and wraps her hand around Lilia's wrist, breaking into a short but most visible smile full of admiration and triumph. Fionia admits that she has not felt anything for this man for a long time, who only touches his wound, although there was once true love for him. The woman looks at her with obvious joy. She calls her interlocutor Lily, which leaves the girl herself in a pleasant shock since she did not expect such an embarrassing nickname at such a moment. Fionia Felicia invites her to leave with her, reminding her that this was her proposal specifically for her. The girl extends her hand in a gesture of readiness to call and leave, taking Lily with her. Lily begins to think and goes into her own thoughts, but eventually agrees. The girl who ends up in this world is surprised by this outcome of events. But then two girls suddenly call her, which makes her shiver and give her goosebumps. They both say that they took this decisive step thanks to her, to which Seraphi herself tries to downplay her importance in all of this. Luna Ferrens immediately encourages her with a bright smile and says that this is her friend. Fionia and Lilia hug the newcomer from both sides and thank her once again. This makes Seraphi herself feel uncomfortable. A doubt appears in her head that this is not the best future, because now Saint Lily, who owns white magic, will have a new ally. These allies now include the true genius of dark magic, Fionia. In the future, they were supposed to unleash a fierce war that would shake the future of the Empire, but now both ladies are hugging the newcomer. But Seraphi herself doesn't care what will happen to this world, because she just uses everything that comes to hand, but then she hears her name from a male voice somewhere in the distance. Everything she had changed up until then was only her efforts, but suddenly and unexpectedly he appeared. Duke Felicia's son, Orcus Felicia, walks up to everyone and points at everything around him. Everyone's faces show fear and alarm when he asks what happened here, but only Fiolia expresses ardent contempt. The time traveler looks at him and doesn't know what to do. A year ago, Seraphi Validus remembers how someone smashed a bottle of wine on her head, saying that this was her fate at that moment. Only a week had passed since the time traveler found herself in her body. But the girl understands that even after this, she lost consciousness and woke up. This world from the novel became her new reality, not a dream. The lady at that moment did not understand how she should live and act, and the place seemed strange and bizarre to her. Luckily, she had no problems with reading and speech, and she was lucky that this was the world from her favorite novel. But in her opinion, this does not change much, because her character was not given even a couple of lines, so she decided to change it. At this time, the father of her character's family must be gambling in some bar. Due to long-term abuse, the character Seraphi's body is all wounded. If the time traveler leaves everything as it was, then she will face the same fate as the real Seraphi. She will die. Now, the quickest solution to her problem is to divorce the Count and Countess, but she is not able to, and if it were possible, she would have done so long ago. Seraphi, in a prayerful pose, asks for forgiveness for becoming an ungrateful wretch. The girl hardly remembers the rules and laws of this world, so she comes to the repository of all knowledge, the pride of the Empire. The worker directs her to the West Wing, but she has quite a distance to walk. The time traveler is indignant that the library is the size of an entire palace, and it takes half an hour to get to the wing. Immediately, a guy with shining silver hair and yellow eyes calls out to her. This is Chris Iris, called Carl Trever. He was quite popular, the son of a marquis, so his role is significant. Carl Trever extends his hand to her and calls her by name, which surprises Seraphi, who was not even a minor character, and the guy explains that he recognized her by her hair. Blue hair was a distinctive feature of the Validus family, which surprised the traveler herself, who did not remember this and had completely forgotten it. The girl puts on the hood, covering her hair, and thanks Sir Iris for his help. He asks how the lady recognized him, while his cheeks turned red, as if a blush had appeared. The traveler doesn't know how to lie, but answers that she recognized him by the coat of arms on the scabbard, because the image of an iris leaf symbolizes Iris's family. The young man immediately decides to examine his scabbard until he comes to understand how he was recognized. The girl asks if he is busy, and after answering asks for help, the guy helps to get books from the top shelves, which the lady herself cannot reach. He is surprised by the selection of all the books, and his eyes become like 5 kopecks. Chris Iris asks if Seraphi is really going to read all of this, to which he hears an affirmative answer, and the reason for this is the goal of finding something in these books. The traveler learns that there is a separate law for aristocrats, and the country itself has a class system and a way to become the legal head of the family. The guy asks if she found anything, praising her amazing concentration, and hears that it's all thanks to him. Neither of them noticed how time flew by, and Carl Trever apologizes for not being able to walk her to the mansion, to which Seraphi herself replies that she should be the one apologizing. The girl thanks him with sincere kindness. The guy looks sad and depressed, as if he wants to say something, but doesn't dare. He says the lady has chosen a difficult path for herself. The lady answers him that difficulties are better than being beaten to death, but she herself understands that this young man knew everything after all. Even if he is a knight, he still couldn't be so kind to a stranger, so he thanks him for this day. Chris Iris says that he should have, because he is a knight. Naturally, he should have done it, and the girl is surprised by his nobility. Seraphi decides to extend his hand to her with the necklace. She asks if she can ask the incredibly kind knight to ask for one favor. The girl asks to come to the mansion after 8 o'clock in the evening in a month from today and return her necklace. The young lady is confident that if this is done, then Seraphi Valelis will be able to survive in this life. The traveler arrives at her place and is met by the butler. The young lady asks how her mother is, and the servant replies that she took her medicine and is resting in her room. The girl with a sad face replies that now she understands everything. She immediately begins a conversation with the butler. Seraphi asks him if he wants to get rid of the father of the family, with genuine interest. The servant asks if his mistress is serious, to which he hears an affirmative answer. The girl clenches her fist and says that she intends to renounce her father, the count. She talks about her goal of becoming a countess herself and throwing her father out of the house. The servant asks if she wants to revive the family, and the traveler replies that she is not asking to follow her so blindly, but in the current situation he will be much better than him. They don't say a word to each other, but there is tension and anticipation of something grand and new in the air. The butler asks how he can help her, and she replies that, for starters, he needs to stop looking at her with such an absent gaze. Seraphi asks him to help her, and she promises to lead him. He just needs to follow her. The maid is surprised and calls out to the butler as she descends the stairs. Marin asks where he has been going lately, and she notices that the butler is constantly walking with the young lady. He, in wild fear, replies that the young lady has gone mad. The servant tells about the news that there was a fire in the magic tower, the cause of which was an experiment by Lady Felicia, the Duke's daughter. The girl notes that this is definitely not a joke, since it was written. The girl asks to look at what she is showing, while everything develops as in those memories. The young lady plays with the jingling bag in her hands and smiles. The butler immediately asks where she got so much money, to which she replies that she took it from her father's pocket and slipped him a sleeping pill, and he won't find out. He is very frightened by Seraphi's mood to have fun, and he says that he did not think that she would be the same countess as her father, with reproach and indignation. A young lady stands in line to buy lottery tickets, which frightens her servant. The man starts to scold and reproach her for such reckless spending because the family's financial situation is already worse than ever, and the girl starts to justify everything by saying that this is their chance and he doesn't understand. When asked what their chances are, the girl replies that they can hit the jackpot, which immediately causes the servant's last hopes to vanish. Then they started sending her to the hippodrome, which also did not delight the old servant, with his frayed nerves, who says that his daughter has become the same as the current count. Upon arrival, the butler no longer fully understood where he was, and due to the heat, he began to forget who he was. But when he noticed a new adventure with a gambling game that his young mistress wanted to play, he immediately ran to bring her back to her senses. The girl watched the horse races and with a satisfied face understood that now she would have a huge win, and from this she could calmly promise her servants very generous gifts. The man was shocked because the result of the competition turned out to be a major victory for them. Almost immediately he asked for payment of the delayed wages. The girl smiled as she listened to the story of how her servant had a wife and children at home who still needed to be fed, and the question of what to give him next. The empire in which they lived brought back the love of flowers and plants, fertilized by the blood of conquered peoples, without hiding the pride that absolute power is true beauty. Under the shining golden sun, orchids and irises blossomed, which later became symbols of the empire and the ruling houses. The third prince of the Ortus Empire, Estier Lisario, is glad that everyone was able to gather, saying that it has been a long time since they were able to do something like this. The butler immediately began to talk about the sad appearance of Chris Iris. As the third prince answered him, Lady Mooney broke off the engagement with him, about which he begins to say that he was not abandoned. The noble knight says that he recently met Lady Validus, the count's daughter, to which the conversation turns to what a spendthrift her father is, even though he is already too old for such a nickname. They all discuss the girl's plan to take over the title, suggesting that her father did not properly educate her as an heir, which could become a complication in her path. Orcus asks if it will be possible to implement this at all, because this business will be incredibly unprofitable. The third prince replies that it is quite feasible if it is a court of forced inheritance. They tell Crisau that he got involved in something that wasn't his business, to which they hear the answer that he doesn't think so, but simply feels guilty. In fact, only the lazy don't know about this lady's situation. But he saw that her eyes were burning so brightly, as if she was fighting an endless battle alone. Being a knight and unable to help in any way, he was tormented by terrible guilt and sadness. He is asked again about that very day. They are interested in how much time was given, while the very necklace given to the knight lies on the table. The butler and the maid begin to discuss the fact that their young mistress was able to pay them their wages. The man is not in the best mood because she bought a whole bunch of completely useless things. The month that the young lady had talked about so much was about to end soon, and they were wondering how she was going to act in court. Enough evidence has already been collected, but the Count himself has also done some mischief, which the time traveler herself is watching. By using the memories of the novel, her financial situation has improved a little, and knowing the future helps her a lot. With the money she earned, Seraphi was able to cover her living expenses and pay the servants back wages. With the remaining money, she decided to buy land. All the servants had frightened and worried faces, and in their eyes, in the opinion of the young lady, she looked exactly like the Count himself. But she herself is tormented by doubts that if Chris does not come on time, the plan will not work, and all her efforts will be in vain. The butler informs his mistress that her father has returned. The time traveler says that it is time to start their plan. The servants try to calm their master down, but all attempts are unsuccessful. He continues to rage and drink. The real owner of the body died that day at the hands of her father, who was terribly drunk and aggressive. It was after this that the traveler herself ended up in this body. The Count immediately notices the young lady, and his voice immediately turns into a scream. Here is a murderer who killed his own daughter, who continues to yell at her, starting a conflict. She kindly asks him to stop, which stuns the Count, and he himself loses understanding of what happened. The girl runs up to him and presses herself closer, asking him to stop because he is harming himself. Here, 2 men are already walking towards the estate, having promised to come here on this day. Chris calls out Lady Validus's name loudly, just as the lady herself had asked him to do on the day of their deal. The guy shouts that he came to return her necklace. The butler hears this and understands that he needs to hurry as quickly as possible. He opens the doors to the estate, saying that they were very much awaited. Seraphi calls his father a fucking piece of trash and asks why he lived in such a vile manner all this time. The girl did not understand him at all. The Count only clings to the weak and torments them, and this posing of the strong looks disgusting. She begins to suggest that he die quietly and without assaulting other people, which makes him angry, but for now he can still maintain at least the slightest self-control in his hands. The time traveler asks if she should kill her father herself, because this is the only way his murdered daughter can rest in peace. The Count immediately attacks his daughter with a bottle of wine, but someone protects her from him and she falls to the ground, not noticing her savior. Then Orcus Felicia, who also came to save her that day, lifts her up in his arms. The girl doesn't understand what he's doing here, but he looks at her with a very deep and thoughtful gaze, with sparks running in his eyes. Chris seats the Count in a chair and ties his hands so that he cannot escape from his grip. Orcus helps the young lady up, and she says that they really came, rejoicing and surprised by this. Chris replies that he could no longer act in a way that would make him feel ashamed of his own pride. This makes the girl laugh, but she laughs kindly. Her risky move, based on faith in humanity, fortunately paid off and produced the most necessary result. The Count yells at his daughter, calling her a terrible, ungrateful bitch who betrayed him and the family by pretending to be modest while secretly seducing men. Chris and Orcus look at him with evil grins. The girl is already starting to be incredibly alarmed and infuriated by this. Orcus takes out his crossbow and begins to nock an arrow, while the lady herself points the target to him with her sword. He shoots at the chair in which the young lady's father was sitting. Seraphi places her sword in the same place where her savior shot her and turns to her father. She says that they are awaiting a meeting in court about forced inheritance, while the time traveler herself thinks that after taking revenge for the owner of the body, she will have to get a ticket to a good life. The young lady thanks the 2 men for coming to her aid. Orcus says that he only followed Chris, while he himself only smiled, looking at the girl. Seraphi says that his help is also true, however it may be. He starts talking about her father with serious eyes. Count Validus will be handed over to the Imperial Knights by Sir Iris and arrested as a criminal caught red-handed. Orcus tells her to hand over the relevant documents to the Imperial Knights who will arrive soon, and the matter will be dealt with quickly. But there is one thing. If she wants to win the case, she'd better keep a low profile. The girl says that she will do everything to ensure that the trial goes well and that they win. She is very irritated by the fact that Orcus does not know how, as it seems to her, to listen without interrupting others. She gives him the middle finger and wants to look around, calling him an asshole. In her eyes, he had already become an annoying type, to whom she was making an obscene gesture. The time traveler still doesn't remove her hand, and the guy just continues to stand with his back to her. When he turns around, the young lady pretends to be a sweet girl and smiles at him, crossing her arms. Orcus admits that he saw everything, and the young lady does not know how to be secretive at all, which shocks the girl herself. Rumors and condemnation among the people were faster than a galloping horse. Everyone was saying only bad things about Seraphim. Everyone compares her to her father, which irritates the girl herself. Seraphim decides to take off her big hat and show everyone that it is she. Everyone is only saying that her new hairstyle looks terrible and wrong for a lady of even such status. 7 days before the trial, everyone was in great anxiety and doubt. The maid asked her young mistress if they could really win. Seraphim says that because the court approved it, they have a chance of winning, but what if they suddenly lose? They will all leave and live together because she has the money to provide for them all. All the servants immediately become delighted and embarrassed. The maid asks her not to worry too much, and the butler shouts triumphantly that they will definitely win. The time traveler reminds them that they all have an important task ahead of them. The girl decides to cut her hair first, grabbing a pair of large scissors. She makes a wide cut. This frightens the maid very much, and her scream echoes throughout the estate. The young lady decides to take a walk around the grounds of their estate in the dead of night. Immediately, someone addresses her, but at first she doesn't understand who it is. The girl asks why the butler doesn't sleep, and he greets her with a bow and replies that he also doesn't sleep much at night. It was at this point that she suggested that he change everything and make a new life for himself. He felt terribly sorry for her then, that she had taken on such a burden so young. The servant says that she is no longer like her former self, which is surprising and worthy of respect, and in order for her to find peace of mind, he says that regardless of the outcome, she is no longer alone. The time traveler jokingly asks if she is now indebted to him, and she herself thinks that even if she soon disappears, she will do everything so that these people can live in peace. But nevertheless, the situation with a daughter who has suffered domestic violence and who is aiming for her father's title of count in a family conflict is not an easy one. The girl is greeted by someone's voice, which causes joy to appear in her eyes. Chris and Orcus greet her with their usual faces, smiling, nervous, and stern, but warm. Orcus is surprised by his new hairstyle and says that his entire neck is visible, and the girl replies that she cut it and made soup out of it. They say they will be her witnesses in court and are temporary guardians for now, since she currently has no guardian. But they can only help with testimony, so there will be no more help from them. Orcus admits that they have no chance of winning this case. But Seraphim does not lose the calmness on her face and continues to smile at them with a warm look. Orcus remembers asking his father to attend the trial as a witness. His father said it was a good experience and ordered that the schedule be cleared for that month. He began to talk about a lady who approached him with a matter that he wanted to entrust to his son. The man says that he will learn a lot and hands him something wrapped in fabric with floral patterns. Ortiz comes closer, touching the collar of the newcomer's cloak, telling her to try to win this trial as much as possible. The girl claims with complete confidence that she will be able to win this case. Lady Seraphim Validus and 2 witnesses are invited in, and the 3 of them go into court. The trial will take place in a luxurious place with a very beautiful interior, which greatly surprises the young lady. Because of such an aristocratic interior, the lady thinks that she should have at least dressed up a little if only she knew, especially since the count even dressed up, which drove her crazy. Orcus reminds the young lady that there are too many prying eyes here, and she replies that she did nothing wrong and did not say a bad word. The man says that she still did it very expressively with her eyes. The young lady asks if she should now lower her eyes to the floor, to which she hears the answer that she just needs to be more careful until they win the case. Her Majesty the Empress is invited to come. A majestic woman wearing a crown announces the beginning of the court hearing. She gives the floor to the defendant. The count shouts that he did not abuse his daughter, knocking with his hands. They ask him how to explain all the wounds and bruises on the young lady's body, and he answers that it has been like this since childhood, and her health problems and thin skin, which only needs to be slightly touched to cause a wound. The man replies that all the testimony of the servants, which he was reminded of, is not even trustworthy. The head maid, he said, actually had very poor eyesight. He begins to justify himself by saying that he did indeed make a big mistake in relation to his daughter, but it was an exceptionally strict upbringing, for her own good. His phrase about those people disgracing him in front of such a huge number of people greatly outrages his daughter herself, who does not even hide, but fully expresses her indignation. For him, raising such a fuss over some trivial family matter is simply outrageous, which is why the Count shouts about it at the top of his voice, grabbing at his clothes. The girl with pink hair asks Fiona what she thinks about this whole situation. In her mind, the assumption that the Count was going to reduce everything to a simple family quarrel was not such a bad idea. Everyone starts discussing the Count and how he doesn't look so bad, surprisingly, and his daughter seems to have no evidence other than her own words. Everyone condemns and discusses the appearance of the daughter, who, in their opinion, cannot even show the slightest respect for her father. Fiona asks herself if Lady Validus is as fragile and unhappy as she seems. All those who came were horrified, and many of them were not shy about shouting out their emotions. Seraphie lifts up her dress and reveals a ton of bruises on her legs, offering to remember their memories of all her wounds. The girl shows her shoulder, which also has a lot of bruises that have left almost no healthy space on her body, and she says that everyone is probably eager to hear about all this. Her father himself immediately becomes shocked, no less than all the people around them who are discussing this whole nightmare. Orcus asks if it was really necessary to let things get to this point. Everyone is looking at them, and here is Her Majesty the Empress, so you need to watch your actions. The young lady replies that everyone has paid attention to them, and now there is a chance to win the case, because everyone has seen the evidence in their favor. The guy asks her if she is doing this because she has nothing left to lose, but the time traveler replies that it is the other way around. Even if she loses, she has many ways to survive. She only does this because she has something to lose. Seraphie begins to talk about how her father treated not only her terribly, but also her mother and servants, and thereby grossly trampled on the sacred duty of the head of the family. Therefore, it is her filial duty to inherit the title granted by Her Majesty the Empress and put an end to her father's injustice. The Empress gives the right to speak to witnesses from each side. Chris says that he and Orcus witnessed what happened firsthand, even though he did not use violence against her that day. If the boys hadn't come to return her necklace that day, her father would have definitely used violence, and a brutal beating would have occurred. The butler begins to add and says that the wounds on the young lady's body are clear evidence of old beatings. The maid also says that she once saw the Count throw a bottle of alcohol at his daughter, and after that the lady could not get out of bed for 3 days. The Empress requests testimony from the defendant. The man says that although his daughter's punishment was unnecessarily cruel and wrong towards her, the young lady still does not deserve the title. He begins to accuse her of sometimes behaving worse than the Count, becoming addicted to gambling and almost squandering the family's entire fortune. Seraphie begins to say that it was only one time, but only because she had a very good dream. As proof, she has winning lottery tickets and winnings from horse racing bets. Her lottery ticket won the top prize, and her bet was also correct. So these expenses were not pointless. The Empress says that the young lady is incredibly lucky. She begins to think that the young lady knew in advance that she was going to win when she bought it. Seraphie begins to tell that this could all have been a prophetic dream, as is mentioned in the sacred scriptures. It was this dream that helped her find the land long abandoned by the gods. On the land abandoned by the gods, they left a precious stone. This stone is filled with mana of the highest purity and is the magic amplifier that all mages so desperately dream of. Everyone starts shouting in unison that the young lady has received a precious magic stone. The Empress shuts everyone up and asks if it is true that a young girl was riding. Seraphie begins to say that all this is true. Having received the winnings, the first thing she did then was pay the salaries of the servants, every single one of them. And with the remaining money, she decided to buy the land she saw in her dream. The girl then asked Duke Felicius, an outstanding magician, to conduct an assessment, and he personally confirmed that these were lands abandoned by the gods. The Duke's daughter is surprised that the young lady refers to lands in the plural. She immediately remembers how her father talked about a joint business with a young lady from a noble family, for whom this was a very rare opportunity. In her opinion, now that Truth believed that Orcus had given the handkerchief to that young lady for a reason. The Count accuses his daughter of not telling him anything about the lands she bought, and Seraphi herself does not understand why she should have, since she bought everything with her own money. This makes the man very angry, and his teeth grind from such words. The Empress asks Duke Felicius if the plaintiff is telling the truth. The plaintiff replies that he is telling the truth. He accepted the offer of Countess Validus, correcting himself, but the woman says that he apparently already considers the young lady a countess. Duke Felicia immediately corrects himself and says that he is simply delighted with her outstanding abilities and is already looking forward to their joint venture, which surprises the traveler herself. In the original novel, the Felician ducal family played a significant role. Eventually, he turned against the crown prince and rebelled. But it was destroyed, although now the position of Felicia's family is not so precarious that it could be easily broken, since the Empress herself listens attentively to the Duke. The girl already looks quite exhausted from the whole trial, and the Duke continues to talk. The Empress says that she is ready to announce the court's decision, and the Count immediately begins to get seriously nervous. Phaonia, with a slight grin, waits with interest for the court's decision, while next to her the girl with pink hair is seriously worried. Crick and Orcus are also in anticipation and listen attentively with serious faces. The Empress begins to say that she is making a decision on permission. Forced inheritance of the title of Countess Seraphi Validus. Orcus immediately approaches the young lady and says that it was incredible, which confuses the young lady herself. The girl deliberately asks him if he thought that she could lose, when she herself saw that he was even more worried. They both realized that they were thinking about different things and apologized to each other, and immediately after the young girl wants to give back the handkerchief that the guy gave her, but he tells Seraphi to keep it for herself. Orcus says it suits her very well. The girl is embarrassed to the point of a red blush on her cheeks and promises to repay with something even better, because soon she will become the richest woman in the empire. Immediately, someone calls Countess Validus and she turns her head to the side. Chris congratulates her on her victory and shows his pink-haired daughter-in-law who was next to Phaonia. Seraphi sincerely thanks him, and the man wishes further prosperity to her family. Orcus tells her not to bow her head anymore, because now she has the title of Countess, which everyone is incredibly happy about. For the time traveler, everything is just beginning, because until she returns to where she lived before, she needs to use the original plot to her advantage to the fullest. Chris's daughter-in-law says that the young lady was gorgeous, and Orcus asks Phaonia why she came here, to which she hears the answer that she just wanted to gawk at everything that was going on. The next target of the newcomer is the greatest dark magician from the original novel, the future head of the Tower of Magicians, Phaonia Felicia, who may be able to give her a clue on how to return home. The entire crowd that had just recently spoken terribly about Seraphi congratulates her on her victory and offers their help. She compliments and makes conversation with the crowd while whispering a request into Orcus's ear. The girl says that she will listen to their advice and will gladly accept help from the ducal house and begins to leave, holding Orcus's hand. But the young lady still had a lot of paperwork to do, for which she was not prepared, and she did not imagine that there would be so much of it, and that doing it would be so long and tedious. The maid happily tells her mistress that they have finally arrived at their estate, while the girl's thoughts are filled with plans on how best to bring her crippled body back to normal. All the servants, maids, and butler congratulate their young mistress on her victory and new title of countess. They ask to quickly try the dishes that they all prepared together on the occasion of her victory, which makes the young lady embarrassed, surprised by such an unexpected surprise. Seraphi invites everyone to eat with her, because she won this case thanks to them. The blonde maid starts eating and says that they will be grateful for her treat for them. The young lady says that everyone should not be shy, and she has already prepared everything separately for her mother. The daughter brought food to her mother on a tray. Her mother sits in her chair in the middle of the room and looks into the distance. The woman does not look at the face of her daughter, who informs her that she won the court case today, asking if today is not a happy day. Seraphi is tormented by doubts that her mother will say that she still loves the Count and blame her daughter for taking away his title. The young lady has no idea what she will have to do then. The woman says she is sorry that she doesn't even have anything for her daughter. The mother tells her daughter that all this time, while she herself was becoming weaker and weaker and did not leave the room to eventually give up, her daughter was becoming stronger and stronger. She apologizes for putting all this on such a young girl and allowing it to happen for so long, and Seraphi begins to cry at these words. The young girl is kneeling before her mother, who is sitting in the same chair in the same room from which she was unable to come out and fight back the Count, and now asks for forgiveness for this. The woman looks at her with guilty eyes and seeks forgiveness in her return gaze, while she sincerely repents and suffers from the heavy burden that was on her soul. The girl asks what her mother is guilty of, since she herself suffered from beatings just like she did. The time traveler begins to speak, but her tongue gets twisted, and the letters in her speech are repeated, preventing her from continuing and finishing her speech. The mother looks at her daughter with a smile while she tries to justify her tears by saying that there was just a small speck of dust in her eye. It was this apology that had touched the girl's heart so much since she had come to this world that it had made her admit that she was not okay, because the girl could be sincere. The mother tells her that even if everything goes badly, her daughter can always come to her for comfort because she is not like her parent, not weak, but strong, and takes her hands. The woman promises that Seraphi will be able to live her life happily. They both promise each other that they will live happily ever after and decide to start all over again, because at least now they have no reason at all not to do so. Seraphi smiles, and her tears are already flowing only from sincere happiness for the new fate and the changed future for the fate of the main character. After the young lady tore part of her dress in court, her clothes turned into nothing but rags, which was noticed by the maid, who, with her eyes shining, came up with something. The maid Marin suggests going to a good workshop with an ardent readiness to help, and going there immediately, to which the Countess readily agrees. Seraphi is surprised by this pastime, which is new to her and extremely unusual after the domestic tyranny. She tells the maid that she looks too happy, which the maid herself asks in a hurry. Marin says that she simply always dreamed of going somewhere with the young lady she serves. The girl tells her that with her abilities, the maid could get a job in any other mansion, to which the servant corrects herself and says that she is not complaining, but on the contrary is very happy. From the very day the young lady took her in, she swore that she would always serve her faithfully and truly, and such warm and inspiring words melted the heart of the young Countess again. Attachment to people from this world can create a sea of problems for the traveler, which she now realizes even more strongly, but while her head was filled with this, they had already arrived. Phaonia and her friend Looney Mars are surprised by the visit of the young lady, not believing their eyes. They ask again whether it was really the young Countess herself who came. Seraphi is surprised that she was lucky enough to meet Lady Felicia on the very first day after receiving the title, at the most opportune moment. Now her goal is to befriend her. She asks if Lady Looney Mars is also there, and clarifies that it is very difficult to forget her, a beautiful daughter-in-law of whom Sir Chris is proud, complimenting her, trying to win Phaonia's trust. The young lady says that she intended to drop by the shop and introduce herself, but it was under renovation, but she hopefully asks if they will open soon, to which she hears an affirmative answer. Looney Mars asks if Countess Validus will come to them after the renovation and opening, to which she hears that she will definitely come to her shop. The owner of the shop is incredibly happy about this, and a smile appears on her face from ear to ear. In the original novel, which was a saga of love and war in the kingdom of Ritun, she and Sir Chris were the only couple with a normal, healthy relationship. Besides, this lady is Phaonia's best friend, so it is even more important to remember her and become friends. The young lady says she is very glad to see them both together again. Looney Mars screams joyfully and shakes the young lady by the shoulders, but her friend's imperturbable expression does not even change. Phaonia says that soon she will be so tired to death of the lands abandoned by the gods that she will fully realize the scale and significance of her discovery. She immediately hands her a blue dress, while the young Countess's face speaks of great shock. The maids say good morning to their mistress, who begins to spend her days as a wealthy aristocrat. The servants say that the special orders have arrived, and the gardeners have prepared flowers that have only blossomed today. They ask where to serve breakfast and give out today's newspapers. The butler singles out a special letter, which surprises the young Countess herself. It already seems to her that all these letters do not end, but even multiply by budding. There is a whole mountain of letters on her desk, but these are only the ones that arrived this morning. The girl understands that this is just the beginning, and it will be harder from now on. The young lady made a good impression, but they see her as nothing more than a dummy in a pretty wrapper, so she is considered easy prey. Someone even sends a brazen proposal of marriage, which greatly outrages Seraphi. The Crown Prince has 3 confidants. One of them is Baron Cadio. This henchman of the Crown Prince, ever since the young Countess won the trial, has been sending her proposals of marriage, several dozen letters a day. The young lady gives these letters from Baron Cadio to the butler for kindling. After working so hard to get to this position, she never imagined that she would have such problems. The girl also thinks that this is going too far, but she doesn't have time to sort out all this nonsense. She speaks her thoughts out loud, whether she should bury him, to which she hears the question whether she is going to go into the funeral business. Orcus appears as if out of nowhere. From such a surprise, the young girl falls, forgetting about walking in heels, but the guy catches her, putting his arm around her waist. He asks if something happened, but hears the answer that it was just a good day. But if there were a couple more days like that, there would be trouble, in his opinion, and the heels again seemed not to obey her. The man extends his hand to her and invites her to walk together. Twice a week, they discuss together a joint project on what to do with the lands abandoned by the gods. Thanks to this point, they met regularly. She begins to feel like she has already become close to him, because on the first day he seemed unbearable to her, but now she feels comfortable in his company, and he, it seems, feels exactly the same with her. Seraphi says she checked the documents and asks if the Tower of Mages was on the list of enterprises needed for development. Orcus replies that there was, but nothing has been finally decided yet, although in terms of technology the Tower of the Mages is the most advanced. The girl is surprised that the Tower of Magicians is engaged not only in the study of magic. This stupid question creates an awkward pause between them. The girl seemed very strange to him from the very beginning, which now immediately comes to mind for him. The man recalls the time when they both searched for information from books in the library. The young lady was not at all knowledgeable about worldly affairs and asked him about things that were obvious to him. Orcus asks who she wanted to bury to lighten the mood, which surprises the lady herself. He says that she herself intended to destroy an entire family, to which she asks him not to distort her words, spoken out loud to herself. The girl only jokes that now she wants to bury him, and then wonders if she can tell him the truth. After all, the young lady forgot for a moment that in front of her was a selfish, cruel man who did not take others into account, described in the novel as a very sinister villain. But in reality, everything turned out differently, and she had no one to consult with except him. Seraphi admits that she was proposed to which Orcus replies that it is a rather cheap trick, to which he immediately hears the question of whether he also considers this nonsense. The girl tells him that the marriage proposal is coming from the Cadio clan, to which the guy responds rather briefly. She jokingly asks if this family deserves all of his extermination, to which he replies that no, and the family itself is quite noble, suggesting that they close the topic of burials. Seraphi is outraged that they are counting on marriage without having ever met, only on the basis of letters, and even after a polite refusal, they continue to send proposals. Orcus tells her that the hierarchy of the aristocracy is not so simple, clearly understanding that she knows nothing. He says that this hierarchy is determined by the history of the family, its honor, and many other factors, which gives a better understanding of all this to the young lady. The guy, answering a question about the influence of the Cadio family, says that no family, including his Felicia, can simply ignore him. They were originally a neutral priestly lineage and owned gold mines in the northwest. An ancestor of Cadio discovered them during missionary work, which is why there were rumors at one time that they received the blessing of the gods. Now the girl understood why he proposed to her. She offers to summarize everything for her so that he can check whether she understands everything correctly. The situation of the Cadio clan must be the exact opposite of hers now, and the fact that they can get away with ignorant suggestions means that they have enough power to do so. The family has connections with the Crown Prince and the honor of a family of priests. In addition, the possession of accumulating rich resources, and these are, most likely, those same northwestern gold mines. For them, this is truly wealth that God himself has given. But she begins to doubt that these mines are, by chance, not drying up, because that would be a crushing blow for them. In that case, it is quite natural that they became interested in her, the owner of lands long abandoned by the gods. But in the end, the lady is too insignificant, because she herself has achieved nothing. From the very beginning, from the trial to this project, without the help of the Felicia family, she would hardly have been able to achieve anything, so they are attacking her from all sides, trying to use her. Seraphy says that she is terribly tired of all this. Why should she even start cleaning up what her negligent father did? Orcus simply lets out all the emotions of the young lady from her overwork. He replies jokingly that he will collect her bones if the young countess dies of fatigue. The young lady says that until then, one must do what must be done. First of all, before going to look at the land, she suggests checking the contract again. The girl again asks a lot of questions about the terms of the contract. The guy understands that the young lady is in no way inferior to the Cadio family, which makes her very offended. He puts a sun hat on her, noticing that it constantly sways to keep her head from getting too hot. In front of them there are many trees and bushes, under the scorching rays of the sun. But beyond them there is a desert from which the young lady is running away. Orcus explains that his father was a court magician, recalling that when the lady came here with him, he could not use magic. Seraphy says that the Duke then used magic to test the land, and the boy replies that it was only because she allowed him to do so. He was unable to create a flame to light a cigarette, but he was able to use high magic to explore the earth. This strange phenomenon bothered him, and he told his son about it. The guy admits that after that he came here with his father, but nothing came of it, which shocks the young lady herself. It wasn't just about magic. Orcus shows his aura, which fades when the girl becomes wary. She learns what an aura is, which differs from ordinary magic in its principle. The aura became larger, which the Countess noticed and said something about. The guy explained that now she knows that it is an aura and is no longer afraid but is getting stronger. Orcus asks if he understands everything he is talking about. Nothing can be done on these lands without her permission. In other words, this land is subject only to her. The girl is amazed that this fact was not mentioned in the novel, although she had doubts before. But at that very moment, a gust of wind blows away her hat. The Felicia family has always been described in the novel as serious and capable of becoming a huge threat to others. But no matter how you look at it, he is not one of those who would decide to rebel and die because of a trivial break in an engagement. On the other hand, Cadio, the Crown Prince's confidant, who is described as a positive character in the novel, resorts to such insidious tricks. In the original story, Orcus was executed for treason, but with so many differences and unaccounted variables, it might be possible to change the plot and achieve a different ending. He is too conscientious and a good person for a villain, so the young lady asks him not to die this time, which the young man himself did not hear right away. Someone calls Fionia as she descends the stairs. Here she calls out to Esther, who has come to visit them at the estate. Esther asks if she is already going to the Tower of Magicians, calling her diligent, and what His Highness is doing in the living room this morning. The girl immediately decides to ask if it is about the business that her brother is busy with, to which she hears a compliment about her quick wit, and replies that her brother is at the training ground. He replies that he knows, and Fionia asks what he was doing here then. Esther replies that she doesn't want to look at sweaty muscles in the morning, and waits for her brother to finish. The girl replies that she will go then, and the guy is offended at her for not listening to the end. He begins to get lost in his thoughts. Fionia's fiancé, the Crown Prince, repeatedly had very sweet conversations with some unknown girl. Esther says that when he first saw this, he should have been dissuaded from entering into an engagement with him. Orcus comes and asks what he is talking about and what His Highness brought here. He replies that he came to see him, calling the guy Kiss, shortening his name, and he simply leaves and politely says goodbye. Esther says that Mother was worried about his well-being, and Orcus assumes that Her Highness is interested in the progress of affairs. He asks to report on a specific matter for which his mother would praise him, asking to help him lead the life of an idler. After all, this is necessary for the Crown Prince to believe that Esther is not interested in the throne. He reminds Orcus that he put a lot of effort into getting the imperial palace to approve the court. It was a great opportunity to show the aristocrats the grandeur of the imperial palace. And Mother needed some entertainment in her boring life, so she enjoyed her father's story. So Lady Seraphy Validus finally became Countess Validus. Esther says that he is now in quite a bit of debt, and would he like to pay him back a little right now? Orcus asks if the Crown Prince will take revenge if their conversation becomes known. The blonde says that this is why he needs to gain the Empress's favor in order to live even more carefree. He says that if you want to live, you need to be able to spin. Orcus says that it will take at best a month and a half, at worst 2, to develop the land he visited with the Countess. But if he takes it on, he will finish it within a month. Esther compares the young countess to a goddess who looked through the world and found these lands. The man notices that he said too much about the girl's past, looking at the interlocutor, who was much closer to her. He asks why Orcus is so angry. He assumed that he had fallen in love with the young countess, and that is why he asked what kind of person she thought Lady Validus was. Orcus immediately thinks. In his mind, he remembers the young lady at their last meeting, wearing the hat he gave her. The guy replies that she reminds him of a dog. The interlocutor immediately becomes stupefied and asks him again. Esther begins to ask if he compared her to a cute little puppy, but he hears the answer that it was the dog that was meant. Orcus repeats that the countess is like a dog, but still thinks about the little puppy. This surprises Esther. He leaves and walks down the street. He is met by Looney, who greets him cheerfully and asks what he is doing in the shopping district so early in the morning. The guy replies that he just decided to take a walk. Then he suddenly notices the young countess and remembers the words about the dog. Looney immediately introduces Astir, the third prince of the empire, to her friend. The same one says that there is no need for such formal appeals, but a simple X is enough. And the time traveler herself recalls that it was he who raised the rebellion in the original novel, along with the Felicia family. The guy says he didn't know about the two ladies meeting. Looney happily shares that she met the young countess in the studio and became friends with her, and today she promised to show her some good places. The prince, listening to the conversation between the two ladies, thinks about the resemblance of Seraphi to a whining puppy, telling Looney that she is rather embarrassed by such a rapid development of their friendship. Seraphi replies that she was the first to suggest calling her by her first name, since calling her by her last name reminds her of her father. Luna's eyes immediately begin to water, and she tenderly calls her new friend by name. Esther says he understands her feelings, but she'll really have to get used to it. He asks if he can call the Countess by name, like Looney, to which the time traveler gives permission. After talking about Orcus, she realizes that he is trusted by those around him, and the plot itself seems increasingly strange to her. The girl doesn't understand how Looney and Esther could get along so well. The third prince united with the Felician family, and Looney, together with Carl, takes the side of the crown prince. Anyone would say that Esther was a slacker who didn't care about the throne, so why did he try to usurp the throne? Seraphi begins to think that there are some hidden circumstances. The rebellion happened in the second half of the original storyline, so their relationship may still deteriorate. The third prince and Looney notice their friend's condition. Seraphi looks very tired, the result of intense brain work, forgetting that she has the stamina of a moonfish. They offer her somewhere to sit down and rest, asking if she likes looking at the paintings. The three of them go to an art gallery. Esther suggests not to rush, because they can buy paintings right there, and Seraphi says that she was just about to buy a few. The third prince says that such a task really cannot be entrusted to servants, and Looney adds that finding good works of art is an important occupation for them. The traveler says that she would like the servants to understand at least a little about this, confirming her opinion about the aristocratic taste of such people. For aristocrats who cared only about the outer shell, works of art were a means of demonstrating their aesthetic taste. But for Seraphi, this could be a chance to enhance the family's reputation and prove his abilities as the head of the family. Looney asks if she liked something, hearing the answer that the Countess is looking for something else. The young lady asks if there are any more works to look at, which only makes her friend smile even brighter. She is shown sketches of unexhibited works, unknown artists and new authors. If she is attracted to the style of any artist, they will contact him to provide support. Looney says that if the Countess personally seeks out promising artists, then she herself will gain a reputation. The young lady invites her companions to also choose sketches, but they refuse. Esther says that if a member of the imperial family starts to engage in patronage indiscriminately, all sorts of rumors will start and problems will arise, and Looney prefers to engage in trade. Seraphi thinks she's causing her own problems. All the works are amazing, but they are all a bit similar. The girl asks them what will happen to these paintings. No one will support them. What will be their fate? They tell her that they will burn them or throw them away if people don't care about them, and this is always the case, which upsets the young Countess. She says she needs a paperweight. Looney asks if her friend found a painting she liked. The time traveler looks at her reflection in papier-mâché. Seraphi says she thinks she's found a painting she likes. The butler asks what kind of boxes the young Countess brought, because she said that she bought paintings. The young lady replies that these are the paintings. She asks to call Marin and Tara. All these boxes need to be sorted out and hung because more custom paintings will be arriving. Marin and Taru came right away. The Countess says she called them to entrust them with the care of the paintings. She asks to take the paintings out of the bag, put them in frames, and hang them on the walls. It would be good if you change them twice a week. The maids are afraid that something might happen to the paintings by accident, but they calm down when the Countess clarifies that the paintings are inexpensive, deciding to keep silent about the real price. Marin and Taru's eyes sparkled when they heard that a guest was coming to the estate, immediately thinking of Mr. Felicius, already preparing to prepare a treat. But after the hit woman's answer that it wasn't him, and the maids' faces immediately change, she decides to ask if they like Mr. Felicia the most. The servants immediately say that the most important thing for them is the mistress. She just looks very happy after a walk with the master, and when she dines with him. They laughed and talked a lot, and the atmosphere was so good, although Mr. Felicia himself is a man of few words, but with her everything is different. Seraphi says that the young duke is just a business partner to her. It is impolite to him, so let them stop these fantasies. The maids immediately get to work while the newcomer is lost in her thoughts. She is very surprised by how much others could misunderstand her. She thinks in her mind that she doesn't look that happy after those walks, as if trying to deny it. Artist Idar comes to the estate. It was a great honor for him to meet her, about whom the whole country was buzzing, and when he heard that the Countess had shown him patronage, he was incredibly touched. The creator immediately begins to become arrogant and lie about the fact that many noble persons paid attention to him and showed interest in him. This is starting to really piss off the young lady. The Countess tried her best not to frown, but the conceited man continued to praise himself and her along the way. She is alarmed when he mentions that she also bought sketches by other artists at triple the price and immediately asks how he found out about this. The artist immediately realizes that he has said too much. The girl begins to convey to him that these are valuable works into which the artist's labor was invested. Seraphi reminds him that he is not yet her protégé, and the gallery knows that the patronage agreement will only be concluded after a meeting with the artist. She says that doesn't mean her intention was to patronize. At that time, she was with the lady of the Count Marcy family and the third prince, who could confirm her words, and in Adar's head, the mention of the prince echoes. Immediately he calms down and becomes very calm. The young lady is already thinking about simply throwing him out. But in a country where flowers and plants are valued, a style of writing that uses plants and nature as decorative elements is sure to find recognition. Moreover, it is not just a way to accumulate wealth, it has the power to change the course of the art world. This painting should become the cornerstone that elevates her honor and dignity. The artist's gaze was quite serious, which pleased the young lady, but her stern face did not change. The butler kept looking at his watch and counting how much had passed. The Countess is already beginning to plan for the future, what to do when she gets rid of the vulgar image created by her father. Adar shows the picture, while Seraphi's thoughts are only about acquiring the Count's title, which will have great value, immeasurable in money. She absolutely needs it. The young lady says it's amazing and sends away the artist, who has already started chatting about his joy. He apologizes and leaves. But for the Countess, this painting is not at all what she needs. Seraphi asks what she was just told without hearing it. Orcus holds a stack of papers in his hand. In her eyes, he is always handsome and well-built. No matter what he does, you want to watch him. They begin to jokingly discuss the idea again that the young lady was going to bury someone secretly, so that she would at least give a hint before that, to prepare for the farewell. To the answer that she is not planning anything like that, Duke Felicia replies that if so, then thank God, and he smiles at that moment. The young lady does not know whether to tell him the whole truth about the gallery's deception and sending her another artist and all the suspicions about who could be involved in this conspiracy. She just decided to ask if she could handle it. It was a cover to make it appear that she was only worried about her suspiciousness, which surprised Orcus. He begins to say that the Countess was the one who plunged his sword between the legs of the former Count Validus, which shocks the lady herself from the sharp memory of that day. A young lady took the sword from an imperial knight and had an incredible influence on a parent who was destroying a family. Her gaze was like that of a traveler crossing a desert. This compliment touches and embarrasses the Countess. Orcus says that's how he sees her, so she shouldn't try so hard to underestimate herself. He says that the threatening letter from the Cadio family, the low reputation of her family, everything that makes her feel depressed is not her fault. The young lady thanks him, but says that there are enough of them, as long as the knight knows her, to say so. The guy asks if the Countess can't handle everything. Seraphi understands that all the time he was looking at her, who is ready to do anything, even change this original world, to return to her real self. Immediately, tears start flowing from her eyes from all the overwhelming feelings. Orcus says that the tea has cooled down, and the traveler says that it is not necessary, saying that she did not listen attentively, but will improve. He replies that the answer is about necessity, and the Countess compares him to a teacher, after which the knight begins to joke that they continue the lesson. Seraphi smiles and says that he is so kind to play along with this joke. Orcus says that empty words are of no use here. She promises to make every effort to save his family, which the knight himself does not fully understand, and then asks if he likes the paintings. Indira, the owner of the gallery, introduces herself to the young Countess, saying that it is an honor for her to meet her. Seraphi comes with Orcus and says that she came on this matter. Recently she liked one sketch here. Could she find out the name of the artist? Indira's assistant says that this is an artist named Adar Sur, and the gallery owner clarifies that she recommended her very strongly. The joyful artist immediately comes after the young lady's order, saying that he knew about this meeting in advance and was waiting. The Countess herself does not look as happy. Seraphi asks if Indira recognizes the item in her hands, to which she replies that it is a packaged item in their gallery. The young lady asks her again, and she says that their gallery takes various measures to prevent fraud, in particular, a seal made by hand. Judging by the presence of the seal, Indira assumes that Seraphi did not even unfold this sketch. The Countess demands that the sketch that the artist presented to the gallery be drawn, and after that, the question of his patronage will be decided. Adar obediently bows before her. He starts to argue and say that he demonstrated his skills in the mansion, and this is an excessive demand. Seraphi asks again in an indignant tone if she is really making excessive demands. Orcus says that reproduction of the painting is a condition that could well be required before a contract is signed to avoid fraud. The artist says he will do everything as it should be. He finishes a sketch that looks like the painting that was done at the estate. The conversation immediately turns to a patronage contract, but the sketch turns out to be a completely different sketch, which makes the young lady ask how he will explain it. Indira herself is shocked by the completely different manner of writing. The artist immediately starts shouting that it is a fake. He resorts to insulting the Countess until the gallery owner stops him, and the newcomer only becomes more gloomy and angry. The guy starts saying that she is just a woman who kicked out her own parents and imagined herself to be an aristocrat, for which Indira almost hits him. The time traveler tells them to be quiet. Seraphi gives the gallery owner's assistant a chance to explain herself, because she had been polite since their first visit here. The assistant says she knows nothing about what happened. The young Countess accepts this answer. She immediately decides to ask Indira herself about this. The woman apologizing on behalf of the gallery is a clear lack of oversight on her part. If only she had been more attentive. Adar shouts that he didn't know anything. The artist calls himself a victim because the woman called him and he came to them. At this point, the assistant starts to get seriously nervous. The young lady seriously addresses the creator, who almost brought her to a nervous breakdown. Seraphi orders him to shut his filthy mouth and sit on the floor, because she is already tired of tolerating his boorish permissiveness. Immediately, the assistant begins to sob loudly with crocodile tears. Indira immediately reproaches her and asks indignantly why she is crying, since she is definitely involved too, and the young lady mentally agrees with her. The assistant begins to repent that Adar is her lover. She was so sorry that his patronage was interrupted several times, so she did the deeds. Seraphi could not even think, and did not assume that this whole performance could have been arranged because of love. The artist immediately begins to justify himself, saying that he was also deceived and is also a victim because he knew nothing. The lady in love runs up to the object of her affection and hugs him by the hand with a strong grip, to which he orders her to let him go. Adar hits her with a sharp push. He begins to accuse her of ruining everything, doing something unnecessary that no one asked for, and all this is because of her, which horrifies the young lady. The young Countess immediately, without thinking, kicks him in the knee, causing him to fall to the floor. The creator begins to whine about the pain in his leg, curled up into a ball. Seraphi asks if he tried to beat up the man in front of her just now. Not hearing an answer, she completely loses her temper, and her hands clench into fists that are already itching to beat up this artist. Orcus squeezes her hand and holds her hand, asking if she is okay, and she immediately comes to her senses and calms down, looking at the fact that they are holding hands together. With a slight blush on her cheeks and noticing only that it had distracted her so much, she replies that she is fine now. Idar, who is just trying to get up, is asked if he thinks that the woman is to blame for everything, but he grumbles in response that it is obvious since he knew nothing. Seraphi says that she would not have signed a contract with him in any case, which horrifies him. The young lady mockingly asks if he really doesn't understand why no one, including her, has shown her favor. He knows very well that aristocrats who value authority and dignity seek works and artists that are appropriate to this, although he may feel humiliated by having to adapt. But this is only basic respect and politeness, the attitude that is demonstrated even by the employee to whom the artist dared to raise his hand. Idar says that he was simply confident in his skills, without any external attributes. After all, they saw his skill. He is not the kind of person who does not belong in a gallery, but on the contrary. Seraphi says his level is simply a matter of potential. She realized this after listening to the gallery owner's explanations. The work contains the artist's beliefs and pride, and it is precisely the individuality and characteristics that appear in them. There is art as such, which delighted and enchanted the young Countess. After this, the paintings that seemed similar began to look completely different, but his painting did not. There are plenty of artists who draw at this level. Even unknown talents who have never seen the light of day do not lack technique, and some are even better than him. That is why he is not the artist the young lady was looking for, which saddens and horrifies Idar's misunderstanding. A pencil falls out of his hands and hits the easel, but Seraphi says that he will still show him protection. Indira asks again whether the Countess will really provide patronage, while the artist himself is in even greater shock. Idar asks why she made this decision. The time traveler begins to explain that he knew nothing, and that this is all the work of just one assistant, but she herself thinks that this will save her from new violence from him. The assistant immediately asks the Countess for forgiveness. She again begins to apologize and say that she is very sorry, to which the young lady hardly reacts. Seraphi says that this is truly a belated apology. She deceived those who trusted her, neglected her love, and destroyed her own trust, and now she can go away. Now no one will look for her, says the young lady. The gallery owner doesn't even know how to best maintain a dialogue after the whole situation. But he asks if the contract terms are really good, but the newcomer is busy reading it carefully, and then replies that if there are no results, she will refuse patronage. The young lady says that Idar's paintings should be sold in this gallery. Given his self-confidence in his skills, this is not a difficult condition. Indira rereads the contract again until the artist can't calm down. The young lady reminds him that she is only patronizing him because she sees potential in him, and the gallery owner begins to speak. She calls her a truly generous person, to which she hears the answer that she has no talent for jokes. A contract is, after all, a deal and an investment. No matter what, it's all for her benefit. If all goes well, she will be able to assert her insight and aesthetic taste, so this may boost her paltry self-confidence a little. But first, Seraphi met the artist she had been looking for through so many obstacles. Orcus asks her name, to which the lady, timidly stuttering, says the name Via Probi, and the Countess says that there is no need to strain herself. The time traveler asks if the artist by any chance remembers which sketch she gave to this gallery. She asks the artist to reproduce the painting that she sent to this gallery and watches the process. Via is worried and very concerned that she will be rejected again, and the Countess will criticize her skills and will not like the end result. Other aristocrats said that her paintings lacked tact, that they had a vulgar feel, and that patronage would be refused, but now she still had to do everything possible. The artist says that she has drawn everything. Seraphi looks at the painting and begins to think about his choice. She says that she is counting on Via from now on. Indira sincerely thanks the Countess for defending the honor of their gallery and bows low along with her assistant, saying goodbye to the young lady. The time traveler and Orcus also said goodbye on a positive note. This news quickly spread, and she began to be invited to thematic meetings and exhibitions, which only irritated her, although her reputation completely changed. Orcus says that rumors about the Countess's patronage of artists spread quickly. Even his father said that he heard about it at a meeting. In the girl's mind, there was an understanding that the meeting that Duke Felicia himself was attending must have been a very significant meeting, and the fact that they were talking about her at it was a good result. Thanks to the advance received from Duke Felicia, Seraphy was able to provide patronage and increase her reputation, and aristocratic society is the bottom, where everyone only cares about money. The Countess begins to think about what her position will be if the patronage and development of the deposit are successful. Her fortune will increase. Orcus asks if she still receives marriage proposals, to which she hears an affirmative answer, and quite persistently, but she is pleased that the young master is worried about her. They have already told her that Mrs. Fionia has completed preparations for drilling operations. Orcus also puts a hat on her this time to protect her from overheating in the sun, but she says that she took an umbrella. The guy says that if she was going to use this horrible, tiny, and, in her words, ornate thing, then she better leave it at that. The young lady thanks him for the hat, thinking that she will need to prepare a return gift. They offer everyone to go, and in the thoughts of the traveler, until now all her money is in advance from the Felicia family, but from today, everything will change. Once full-scale development begins, she will have her own money. Mrs. Fionia wears her hair in a high ponytail. She immediately charms the newcomer with her beauty and grace. The young Countess tells Orcus that his younger sister is truly beautiful, and he replies that her appearance is fine until she realizes that the brother and sister are very similar. Lady Fionia begins to use magic, and the newcomer is very surprised by this. Orcus reminds her that this isn't the first time she's seen magic, and she replies that his father used magic when she didn't even know it was magic. He just stood on the ground, and then it all ended. The guy explains that the difference in the characters of his sister and father, who does not like showing off, so he does not advertise his abilities. Outstanding magicians can hide magic circles. Seraphy recalls that the Duke was also prophesied in his youth that he would become the master of the magic tower, but he had to inherit the title, so it didn't work out. But his sister has a bit of an inflated vanity, and she loves to be the center of attention. But in the eyes of the young lady, she looks very ambitious, and this is good for her because she wants to become the master of the magic tower, unlike in the original story. Only in this way can the traveler find a way to return to her native world, to her home. Seraphy says that Lady Felicia will become the best master of the magic tower, and she has faith in her, and Orcus replies that in skill his sister is definitely the best. The Countess says that her partner values his sister very much, to which he replies that shouldn't we admit the obvious, but that's why they have a good relationship and such barbs are possible. Orcus says that since the Countess has no brothers or sisters, she cannot understand that the barbs between relatives are always sincere, but his partner replies that this is because of their importance to each other. If they really hated each other, there would be almost no conversations, and the rare words would only be weapons. So the young lady asks him to take care of his sister. A huge explosion is launched next to them, which does not frighten, but on the contrary delights the Countess. Orcus puts his arm around her shoulder to protect her from the danger of magic. The Magi help their mistress Felicia using one powerful magic. They are immediately surprised by what they notice when the smoke clears. Everyone immediately understands that they have found exactly what they came here for. Lady Fionia stands in the tall smoke that has been hanging in the air longer. The girl held the treasure of the gods in her hand. Before her was a whole deposit of the treasure of the gods. Seraphy thinks that she is definitely rich now. Pickaxes cannot cut stone. The miners immediately call Countess Validus. The young lady allows them to extract all the resources. She really likes the fact that everything happens only with her permission, and calls her land a fat man who is much better than many people, and Orcus objects that no matter what you call it, it is just land. The Countess wonders if her father is buried in this ground for a few days, whether he will be reborn as a new person or not, and her partner replies that he will die anyway in the end. Seraphy hears his own phrase and immediately turns around. Mrs. Felicia calls her words the best quote the Countess thanks for today. But she says she should thank her for giving her the opportunity to be present at such a historic moment. The traveler asks her how much she knows about the land abandoned by the gods. She replies that she knows more than others, but the land abandoned by the gods is still uncharted territory, because there are many unsolved mysteries and just as many hypotheses. In her opinion, the treasure of the gods could be the key to solving the mystery. Lady Felicia says that since the chronicles say nothing about this place, it means that the land itself is ordinary, although they have yet to find out. She allows the Countess to call her Fionia, saying that it was only thanks to her that they were able to advance so much in their research. This makes the young lady very happy. Seraphi asks if Fionia really believes that today's events are her doing. Would she like to talk to her about magic later? She truly hopes that this will interest her and begs for consent in her thoughts. Fionia is pleasantly surprised by the young lady's interest in magic because a meeting is about to take place, to which she has already invited Lady Looney Mars. The traveler very reverently asks to join them. Fionia allows her to come to their meeting. Orcus worries about his partner and does not fully trust her sister, which is why they quarrel, but the Countess tries to resolve their conflict. The young lady says that there is no need to quarrel like that because first they need to do what they have to do. This is the first treasure of the gods presented to Her Majesty the Empress. Now, if anyone doubts its authenticity, they can check everything personally. The servants ask rhetorically how they can doubt the Countess's devotion and say that the glow of the treasure is beautiful. Orcus had told them earlier that it was better to keep such emotions to themselves when they had disrespected their mistress. They took on the role of a force amplifier to be kept more secret, because it is not only of great value as a commodity, but also an incredible aid to military power. This is how the question from the original story will be resolved. If everything goes well, then there is a chance to avoid war. Currently, the land belongs to her. The development is being carried out in collaboration with the Felicia family. Then the imperial family will not be able to strengthen itself despotically, and there will be no senseless enmity with the Felician family. The crown prince may not call off his engagement to Fionia, and everything will be fine with Lily. This is still unknown, but the newcomer wants to think about the best. Seraphi's thoughts become about what if they break up, like in the original. The Empress admires the treasure of the gods. Countess Seraphi and Knight Orcus bow, and the lady speaks of her joy in presenting her with the first treasure of the gods, worrying about not hurting her feelings. A bad feeling does not leave the young lady, thinking that it is because of the pen. After she received it, her real goal and determination to return to her world is forgotten. The Countess is told that the lady from the gallery sent invitations to the exhibition as a gift in honor of the successful start of drilling work, and a sketch was enclosed. When she unpacked the sketch, there was a pen lying on it. In the Ortis Empire, which loved flowers and plants, they say that the angel who helped the gods sow seeds had the form of a bird, and its color was as snow-white as this feather. No matter how she got rid of it, it came back. And it was clearly not something pleasant, Orcus advises, for personal safety, to bury the treasures of the gods around the mansion. The maid and the butler both screamed in horror. If the Countess had not listened to Orcus, she would have really died. The intruders wanted to attack them. Seraphi begins to wonder who set this up, because the power that can kill a person and the treasures of the gods are not just an effective and expensive stone. It definitely has much more value. The senseless destruction of Felicia's family is even stranger than that. The gap between the original and this story is getting wider. The newcomer starts to get a headache from these nerves because of such a big difference, and the maid is already starting to worry about her. The young lady asks to prepare everything for the exit, and the servants become happy that they can help and decide to ask where the Countess is going. Seraphi is going to her protégé and is counting on her. These paintings are written in the style of the artist she loved, and they help her not to forget her true self. The young lady says that everyone here makes her feel sad, and the maid does not understand how one can draw in such conditions, calling the artist amazing, with which the Countess herself agrees. Here the joyful children rejoice because the Countess has arrived. The time traveler strokes the boys on the head, asking if Vi is inside, wanting to move them all to a better place, but there are too many buts. She hears people yelling at the artist that she can't do something for her brother, calling her ungrateful. The young lady decides to ask the little girl, and she tells her that they have a brother who went to study in another city, and all the money for patronage is sent to his brother. Via is very worried when she sees the Countess. Seraphi greets her protégé warmly. The artist apologizes for catching her like this and offers her tea, but the traveler says that this is not necessary, asking if the paintings are good. The young lady tells Via to finish drawing because she didn't come to rush her. Upon learning that this is not her studio, but her brother's room, the Countess calls the artist's parents a disgrace. She says that parents who appropriate the child's patronage money and also a bunch of useless younger brothers and sisters on their neck. Seraphy asks if she is uncomfortable. Via replies that the younger ones are not useless, but help her around the house when she works, and the parents feel unwell. The Countess asks if they feel unwell after patronage. The artist is silent, and the newcomer is in shock because of this situation, because she added more money than she planned, precisely so that it would not interfere with her daughter. Seraphy says she made a big mistake because she encountered such scum, but that violence was of a different kind than in her case, so she did not notice it right away. She tells the artist to leave the house if she is not going to continue living like this. The young lady asks whether the artist spent her patronage money exclusively on her own well-being and creativity, and whether there was never a time when it was spent on something else under pressure. Via starts shaking with nerves. The Countess says that if she doesn't tell how she spent the money, her patronage will immediately cease. The artist says she had no choice. Her family had large debts and did not have enough to live on, and they urgently needed money for her brother's education. The young lady screams whether she is in her right mind and whether she has any brains, which frightens the younger brothers and sisters. Via apologizes to her very much, but suddenly the newcomer takes her hands to calm her down. She tells her to leave the house immediately and come to her. Seraphy is very sorry because he understands that this is not right, but anyone can make a mistake, but not correcting it, realizing it, is stupidity. The artist does not dare to answer the question. The young lady answers her that Via's family does not help her, so at least she herself should be on her own side, says who else should worry about whom, asking what she herself wants to do. Viu is confused and misunderstood by this question. The time traveler holds her hands to make it easier to collect her thoughts. The artist asks if it is bad that she likes to draw so much and wants to continue living and doing what she likes. Why, if she does not support her family, she will become bad. Her brother uses her money to do whatever he wants, but she doesn't even have the opportunity to study with her own money. Her younger brothers and sisters are only looking for her, even though she herself needs care. Via was already trying her best, but she always wants to escape from here, where her efforts are constantly insufficient. She screams for everyone to leave her alone, breaking down from all the pent-up emotions. Seraphy just looks at her calmly. The young lady holds the artist's hand, and now she understands the reasons for her fascination with this child's drawings. Desperate to escape this reality, Via just wants to get out of the house. Now, looking at the paintings, she no longer feels nostalgia for the place where she used to live. But these paintings remained just as beautiful. The new painting was already finished and was beautiful in all its colors. At that moment, one of the younger ones began calling the Countess very excitedly. He starts asking if his little sister is leaving, and if they will meet again if they don't take the others. The eldest of the children shouts at him to stop pestering the young lady. Now he will take care of the younger ones, and his little sister can go. The time traveler asks who told him that, and how the younger brother is going to miraculously support so many brothers, sisters, and parents. He replies that he is engaged in sewing. Seraphy tells everyone to pack their things immediately, but so that they remember everything, once they enter her mansion, they are obliged to study and help with the housework for an hour every weekend to work off this debt. But no one is forcing them. The choice is theirs alone, and the young lady asks again about their decision. The butler asks who all these children are. The Countess replies that these are children who will henceforth be under her protection, and asks if he has cleaned up the side building. From now on, the children will live there, and therefore they need to be well looked after. The girl orders them to follow the butler and wait in the outbuilding. The butler carefully leads the children, who are very impressed and shy. Seraphy says the terms of the contract will change dramatically, as she will now be responsible for her younger siblings, and rent and food costs will be deducted from the allowance. The artist understands perfectly well what kindness the Countess is showing and thanks her for such mercy, asking what she can give in return. The traveler says to thank her with paintings, because it is in them that her consolation lies, reminding her of this so that Via does not forget. In addition, she sets several conditions regarding studies and help with housework. Her mother has recently started studying and will be able to teach children, because they give cheerfulness and joy to those around them. Seraphy takes her hand again and talks about the latter. She no longer wishes to see the artist's tyrant parents, so while everyone lives here and is under protection, she does not provide any help to her parents. The young lady asks if she understands what is being said. She notices her sketch and says that everything will be as the Countess says. The children's parents immediately shouted at the gate for the Countess to return their children to them, that it was impossible to separate children from their parents like this. She tells them that if they are thinking about the children, they should leave, but she hears that they cannot do that. The young lady points out the traces of those who recently tried to invade the mansion. They did not know that the treasures of the gods were buried here, but they tried. So if they want to enter, let them try, to which they ask if the Countess is telling them to die now. Seraphi replies that she took the children because it was impossible to live with such parents. And after that, according to her, they have the audacity to come here and demand that they be returned. Weren't they ashamed to take money earned with blood and sweat from their own daughter? The father immediately starts arguing and says that they raised this child, and she should repay them with kindness. The young lady says that their daughter has already repaid them with interest because they are still alive. She explains to them that their children themselves turned away from them and came to her. What could this mean? The time traveler tells them to prepare well. They can report kidnapping, she doesn't care, because she has the opportunity to file a lawsuit for misappropriation of patronage money. Flowers bloomed near the side building. The children from the side building asked the maid to give the Countess a bouquet, to which she joked that they already knew a thing or two about bribes. The young lady asks if these children are living well, to which she receives an affirmative. The servants say that they are not picky about food, they keep clean and live a healthy life, and among them the eldest and third are very smart. It is clear to the Countess that she loves children. The maid says that they remind her of her mistress as a child, which surprises and confuses her. Seraphi says that we need to visit Mother at the same time. A young lady enters the room and asks if her mother is awake. She asks her if she hasn't slept again, studying since early morning, but the woman replies that it's not like that and she shouldn't worry. Lately, thanks to her mother has found great comfort. This touches the young lady very much. The maid says that the Countess received a letter and the young lady promises to visit her again. The girl was very sad that she had to leave so quickly. After all, her mother still hasn't left the room. Coming to Duke Felicia's estate not on business but for a meeting was very unusual. Fionia thanks the young lady for accepting the invitation. She admires the beauty of her partner's younger sister. In her opinion, if she was going to be reborn, it would be better to become Lady Felicia's personal servant. People learn that Seraphi has never been to this garden, and Fionia says that her brother lacks refinement, does not care about others, and does not have the ability to take care of anyone. The young lady is amused by this, although she cannot show it, because she is even wearing gloves bought by her brother. Fionia says that her brother still treats the Countess well. At the trial, he tied a scarf around his neck, and at the time it seemed strange to her to just give away the scarf that he treasured so much, and it seemed to her that he had fallen for the Countess. Lady Felicia thanks her friend for getting along so well with Orcus. He is very picky about people. There are even rumors about him that he hates people, which even the time traveler didn't know about. Then Looney comes and joyfully hugs the Countess. Fionia asks how long they have both been getting along so well. Looney asks if she didn't know that their mutual friend was involved in art together, and thanks to her, they were able to meet wonderful people at a good gallery. She asks Fionia to start the ceremony already, since everyone is gathered. Lady Felicia speaks of her joy to see everyone here. Once again, she thanks them for being here. The main heroine of today's tea party is Countess Seraphi Validus, who attracted everyone's attention. Fionia says that they are starting their tea party and raises her glass. Orcus is walking with his dog. Lala barks as her owner marvels at how far she has gathered, amazed at her courage. 2 months ago, when the dog was brought in, almost everyone had a negative reaction. But Lala barked so well at all sorts of creatures that her father fell in love with her. His father also played and called Lalu clever. He told his son that the dog reminded him of someone. Lala immediately jumps out of the leash and runs away. Many ladies shower the Countess with greetings from their relatives and questions about the lands abandoned by the gods. Seraphi tried to calm them all down at once. But among them all, one girl with unusual purple hair stands out. Lady Castanet, daughter of the Marquis, whose father is known for his straightforward nature, holds the post of representative of the Council of Elders, and enjoying the trust of the Emperor is an influential figure in the aristocracy. The traveler has good memories of her, so she agrees with Lady Castanet's opinion. This story of the lands abandoned by the gods fascinates even a mage of Fionia's level, which she is talking about. Looney says that the Countess is truly amazing, since Lady Felicia herself says so. She calls her friend the genius of black magic of this era, and she says that everyone can do it. Seraphie immediately begins to think that everyone here is the future head of the magic tower. It is amazing how she is able to single-handedly control the 5 elements of magic. But the white magic that Looney possesses has no offensive power and does not combine with other types of magic, but only it can suppress black magic. Fionia could not master white magic. The traveler thinks that Fionia and Looney are completely incompatible in this regard, but suddenly remembers the main character, Lilia, who should now be in the capital. Seraphie suddenly hears that they are talking about a white magician staying in the imperial palace. So Lily and the crown prince have already met, according to the original. From now on, they will start to feel sympathy for each other. Could it really have gone that far? But Fionia says that she also knows, because she personally checked her. The Countess is infuriated by the fact that the crown prince asked his fiancée to look after his mistress, thinking that he had gone completely crazy. At the very least, she should have broken off the engagement and apologized. That would have been much better, but Seraphie realizes that she has changed the original quite a bit. One of the guests says that since a white magician has appeared, this is a very valuable talent. A discussion immediately begins about the identity of this magician, while Looney begins a conversation with the Countess. Looney asks if her friend could tell her a little more about the trial, to which she agrees. But Seraphie says that she will not tell about the trial, but about something else, although this is also a story about her father, not exactly a reason for pride. She shares what she learned from this so that her friend doesn't make the same mistakes, and the belief that anyone can change. Drunkenness, abuse, violence. Her father destroyed everything with his antics, not only the family's finances, but also them. The only time when there was even a little respite was when my father ran out of money and he begged my mother for forgiveness. She remembers her father saying every time that it was just this time. Mother sincerely believed the words and promises, but, as everyone understands, each such day did not become the last. Only then did she understand that this man would not change. One of the guests starts an argument that judging one's own father is too much, to which the time traveler asks sarcastically, so it was necessary for her to be beaten to death. Seraphie says that those gathered here should be so kind to her when they see her for the first time today. She had every reason for this position, because if they could change, she would not make them think this way. The young lady says that they are strong creatures, nobler and more valuable than anyone else. They are too precious to blame themselves and suffer because of people who behave inappropriately. Lady Castanet resolutely shouts that the Countess is absolutely right, and she herself will also become more resolute. But what is the Countess interested in? She replies that she will refuse very decisively, so that bad people do not take up her precious time. The other servants also support her and start changing their lives as well, and ending all the horrible people in their lives. Lala immediately runs up and starts barking loudly. Fionia is surprised that the dog came running to her for tea. Orcus sadly says that he did interrupt the ladies' tea party. He asks for forgiveness and begins to pet the dog. His sister immediately takes Lalu's hand and asks if he is making fun of her, if he deliberately spoiled everyone's mood, to which he asks if it had already been spoiled. Orcus notices that the Countess is also at this tea party. The young lady immediately becomes embarrassed when she hears his voice and his request to give him some of her time. He is glad that the tea party made such a strong impression, and everything turned out as the young lady said. The knight asks what happened to his sister today, to which the young lady asks in response what happened to her today. Orcus is silent and thinks seriously. A portrait of her and her admiration for her beauty immediately appears in the head of the traveler. He replies that his sister is especially ugly today, while Seraphie thinks that he is a real older brother. The Countess asks how long they will pretend to people that they have a bad relationship. They start talking about how no one started spreading rumors about them that could have been about them, because Orcus is the heir to a noble family in the Empire. Seraphie is the talk of the town and soon to be the most famous person in the Empire, and it is a miracle that there have been no rumors of their relationship. Orcus says that they were still being followed by some people, apparently the Crown Prince's people, to which the young lady says that she knew it. Considering the behavior of those close to him, this is quite likely, for example, Lady Typhoon, who did not hide her desire to humiliate Fionia, and Mr. Cadio, who so persistently sends proposals. The time traveler thinks that it is clear from his surroundings that the crown prince is a terrible person and is not suitable for the role of the main character, and says that she hates him more than she thought. Orcus smiles cheerfully and is not shy about laughing in the company of his partner, and receives a compliment that his smile is especially generous today. He says that it is all because the Countess's words are too refined today, to which Seraphi replies that the compliments on this day are also very generous. Together they decide to behave even more trustingly and friendly, since the Crown Prince is watching them. Orcus says that the Crown Prince was not present at the forced succession trial at that time. Seraphi does not understand how the Crown Prince could learn the news about the land abandoned by the gods later than the third prince. Could he really be aiming for the throne too? But Orcus replies that everything is not so, and he is just a typical domineering, controlling person, while the time traveler remembers that in the book he evokes a completely different impression. But in reality, the Crown Prince only seems scary and creepy. As Orcus said, they need to show their closeness. The young lady thinks that the Crown Prince would not touch his fiancé's family and confidants, but she sharply asks if it is just because the third prince acts like a slacker. But after the answer that if you, the third prince, had not done so, you might also be dead. And the word also frightens and shocks the Countess so much that she does not notice how she dropped her cup of coffee. Now she understood why the Felicia family and the third prince were plotting a rebellion in the original story, since the Crown Prince killed the person who was so much of a hindrance to him. Knowing about this, the third prince wisely decided to pretend to be an idler. But she is haunted by the question of where the second prince disappeared to in the original. He never appeared, and only the third prince posed a threat to the throne. Orcus asks if the young countess is okay. He immediately calms her down and says that the crown prince will not be able to harm her, and the young lady suggests a change of scenery. Seraphi takes him to a jewelry store and tells him to choose whatever his heart desires, because this is her gratitude for the gift he gave her. In fact, she wanted to buy it with the money she got from the treasure of the gods, but then it would have been too late. Orcus asks permission to choose something expensive. The young lady says with a sly smile that the most gracious Countess Validus, favored by the Empress's grace, can afford whatever she wants. But then Lily and Crown Prince Trips suddenly enter. Trips tells her that they are here because he wants to buy her everything she wants, so that, at least with him, Lily could allow herself to forget about etiquette. Seraphi was just beginning to think that this day would be a good one. Orcus greets the Imperial Crown Prince with a bow, but his expression is as gloomy as the Countess's, and asks who the girl next to him is. The Crown Prince says that this is his guest. Lily is worried about falling out of favor with Lady Felicia, and so falls to her knees and greets them, saying that she has long admired Fionia and wants to serve in the Magic Tower. Orcus introduces himself as Fionia's brother and says that it is a great honor for him to meet her. Lilia, with glowing eyes, begins to talk about how Lady Felicia is her idol, and she has heard about her exploits and achievements since she lived in the Albiolos domain. Trips asks who is here with Orcus, while Seraphi's face almost goes numb from shock and surprise. She bursts into very loud and incessant laughter, which she could not contain. This begins to irritate the third prince and frighten Lilia, but the newcomer introduces herself and asks to forgive herself for such impoliteness. Lily asks if she is okay, and the young lady replies that it is a coughing fit due to mental anxiety. Lilia asks to wait so that she can help, while the thought appears in their heads that this girl has a rather close relationship with Orcus. It's strange, because this is at odds with the reports the Crown Prince hasn't heard any rumors about the affair. But he sees that this is definitely more than a business relationship. It turned out unpleasant. Orcus asks Trips to choose earrings for his sister, and when asked when he began to care about his sister, he replied that Countess Validus wanted to thank her for helping her develop the deposit. Neither he nor the Countess know his sister's tastes very well, but if His Highness had chosen personally, she would certainly have been happy, and Seraphi tells Lilia that she is definitely in order. The Crown Prince is reluctant to help. He chooses earrings with large and bright gemstones that will suit his sister's strong image. Trips takes Lily away, saying that there are many shops in other places. Lilia says goodbye and says it was nice to meet you, and Seraphi asks Orcus what he would like. He says that rings will suit them. To deceive the Crown Prince's eyes, they will have to pretend that they are dating. The seller thanks them for their purchase, and they leave together with the rings already on, Seraphi hugging Orcus's hand.